are back with season 2. This is Ari and Sid's show. Of course, I'm Ari.
And I'm Sid. We're forever friends, and this is the shit we care about.
And if you're a returning listener, you already know the dealio. We have conversations. Sometimes they're meaningful, sometimes they're not so meaningful. And so we just threw this shit together, and we're hoping to spread some awareness and learn from one another outside of our text threads.
For sure. So you should already be following us on the interwebs, but if you're not, definitely go ahead and hit follow on Instagram as well as Twitter. Keep up with us. Stay connected, leave a comment, leave us a rating on Apple or Spotify. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into some shit. Happy Black History Month.
Woo, 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 woo.
Black people and non-Black people, because if you're not Black, you appreciate Black people. And you can't say you don't. And if you don't, then I don't know why you're listening. But we'll move on from that.
Yeah. Happy Black History Month. Happy New Year. This is, season 2, episode 1, and this is we're in February. So we hope that January was good to you. And we hope that February so far has been as well. But yeah, welcome to 2021. And thanks to everyone. We took a hiatus and we were doing some behind the scenes stuff. We took a break to, self-care it up and spend time with our families during the holidays. But we were peeping our stats. And so, shout out to those folks who were catching up on season 1 while we were, on a break.
We appreciate
and
you.
Welcome if you're new.
Yeah. So our topic for today is, what is a feminist? What comes to your mind first when you think about feminism and being a feminist?
Okay, so if I close my eyes and the word pops up, the random stuff that pops up in my head is like protest, picket signs, women's rights. The image of a feminist that pops up directly in my head is a white woman. But that's not the only image of a person that pops up. That's just the first one. So yeah, that's what a lot of what I think about. I guess the first few things I think about. What about you? But then I also think deeper. But yeah, I guess those are the first things. Okay, I'm gonna just leave it there. I don't know what I'm trying to do. What do you think?
Okay. This is so funny. I mean, it's not really funny, but when I think of a feminist, I just think of that poster of when I was a kid, and it had Rosie on it, and it said, "You can do it." That is the first thing that comes to mind, and I don't know why they thought that poster was a good idea. I mean, I get it in hindsight, but it was like, it was when women were going to work and we can do it too, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, nah, I'm going to pass. I'm going to pass on that. But I do think of, of course, all the things you said, women's rights, equal opportunity, which in this country, that's a whole nother topic, but equal rights for people who have both vaginas and penises, because, they should not be as severely separated as far as like pay and, decisions of our bodies and all those kinds of things that for some reason men thought that they were better at making those decisions for women. So that is what comes to mind, not to be so negative, but
yeah, no, I mean, that's real. That's very real.
Yeah, I think it's there's a lot of good things that have come out of feminism, right? But as we'll talk about today, I feel like in most recent years, you see the repercussions of the feminist movement putting white women first
I agree.
because, as you know, because you're a doula, Black women die more. So we're one of the most developed countries in this world, and we still have women dying from giving birth. And Black
Yeah.
women are the number one. Like if a white woman goes in and it's like, oh, my finger hurts. The doctor's like, oh, let's x-ray it and let's do this. And then, if a Black woman does it, they're like, well, did you get in a fight? Are you in domestic violence situation? They
Right.
ask all those extra shit that doesn't matter, like just fix the finger. Um, so those things make me sad, but I know that, there are things that have been like tools to kind of help project the Black feminist movement forward. It just always is like, it's always a second thought when it comes to like the overall large feminist movement altogether, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion.
Yeah, I mean, like, even, thinking back to like high school and thinking about what little we did cover about like the feminist movement and things like that, like, I don't ever remember them speaking about Black women. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it, growing up, history class was always weird growing up anyway, because like I felt like there were never stories about Black people until they talked about slavery. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like Black people just didn't exist in these times. Like, like for me growing up, it was hard for me to even picture what Black people were doing in the 1940s and like, things like that. Like, because no, outside of like being enslaved, like, so I think you're right about like there was some damage that has been done with putting, or making the face in the center of feminism being white women, because you erase like, an array of experiences and people, and then that has lasting effects on specifically children, and then those children grow up to be, adults.
Yeah, and what's funny? What I was thinking about also when we were discussing what we were going to talk about with this topic is you mentioned something that I had honestly was like, wow, you say that they didn't mention Black people really when it came to feminism. But it's crazy because when I think back about it, Black women weren't seen as feminists. They were seen as civil rights activists, which is essentially like
Mm.
they're essentially the same thing because a lot of them were fighting for women's rights, women's civil rights. But because the feminist movement was led mostly by white women, they were distinguished in our history books as civil rights activists. So it's like, you have Rosa Parks, which everybody knows, right? But like, she was fighting for other things too. Ida B. Wells, fucking
Mm-hmm.
Sojourner, I can't ever say her name. Sojourner Truth. There's so many that I remember learning about, but like it wasn't in the context of being like a woman rights activist. So I think
It's
it's
almost like it's almost like they kind of erased the 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 identity of women from those people, right? Like they just made them, like you said, like civil rights activists, like not even like a woman, like it was just Black civil rights activists. And so it was like again an example of Black women not given the opportunity or the respect of being like humanized, like, and like seen as
yeah,
women.
yeah. It's
And
like
we
they.
know,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and we know, like, history tells us that for a long time, especially in the United States, like Black women, like you mentioned, like aren't seen as women, but for a long time we haven't really been seen as people either. So
Yeah,
it's the double edge. It's the two. It's the intersection.
I mean, you got a 3/5 rule or whatever that rule was. It's insane. And I think it's like, okay, we grow up and, we want to move the needle for women in some capacity, but we don't really have any tangible, like that we're embedded in our like growing up. As far as like, I mean, you were raised by a Black woman, so that's in itself like, that's a form, I feel like, of embeddedness of how how you can move the needle within your own family. I was
Mhm.
raised by a white woman, which doesn't take away from me being a black woman, but I think like as far as like educationally, I never even stopped to think like, oh, I can be a feminist and be like so and so. You know, it was like, oh, if I want to do something, you know, like even like Bessie Coleman, who was the very first, you know, African American woman to fly a plane. And I know who that is only because my very first time having a black teacher was in sixth grade, and we each did a project where we had to create some form of art or like display showcasing the person that we were given. And so I remember who she was, but like, was that a feminist? Like, you know what I mean? Like, was what
Mhm.
was she doing something that would be considered a feminist? Right, you know,
Mhm.
woman's right, or was it just like her being the first black woman to, you know what I mean? Like, there's so, I don't know. So, yeah, I feel like we are at an age where it's like, okay, well, if we want to do something, we have to like, you know, figure it out and do it on our own. Which I mean, you're already doing that because you're a doula, and that's very much so a big part of women's rights. But I just think that, you know, at my big age of 29, it's like I've never really done anything outside of like, you know, you know, I support Planned Parenthood and I support things that, you know, support um, women's rights and choices. But like, am I actively doing anything? I don't really know what I actively would do with, besides, you know, giving money or like donating
Mhm.
tampons and pads and things. But like, I feel like donating pads and things is really like a band aid. You know what I mean? I
Right.
struggle with because my degree is nonprofit management, so like I struggle with like really getting behind something as far as like donating to them because I'm like, okay, well, like that's not really fixing the problem. You know what I mean? We
Right.
have systematic problems, and I don't think we were taught how to like change systematic problems within, you know, whatever category we want, like black women or um underprivileged, you know, whatever the quote unquote term is for
Mhm.
poverty and homelessness. Like there's so many things that I could identify with, but it's like it's a systematic thing. So like I'm so jaded and like disheartened when it comes to like actually putting effort into, you know, doing things to be a quote unquote feminist.
Yeah, I feel you. Definitely on the like the donating thing, right? Because it's like if we know that there are people out here who are having issues getting supplies or materials to help them and support them through a period of time that they have no choice but to go through, why don't we just make that shit free? Like
Right.
why do we have to go find a bunch of people who will then use money? And you know, like statistically, we know that people who make less money actually donate more than people
Right.
who make a bunch of money. So like you're asking people who already are maybe living paycheck to paycheck, or you know, or maybe like, you know, are middle or low class and are in debt, you know, more than definitely have student loans. You're asking them to donate to something that no one should really have to be paying for anyway, because
Yeah.
it's it's life. It's life. Like it's very, like you said, it is disheartening. Um,
And the
but then
whole
like, you
like
know, go ahead.
I was just gonna say one last thing about, and I think this is a woman's issue, right? Like, I would like to get behind, like, how do we lobby to take off the luxury tax on fucking
The period text,
feminine
yeah.
products? Like,
I
that shit
know,
is
and
dumb.
that's what I was gonna bring up because I feel like somewhere some state just made all products free, and I
I
want
think
to
it
say
was
it's
New
New
York.
York.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, which is awesome, but I don't understand why there can't be something done for that to happen just across the board. Like, I don't think states should have the ability to say like yes and no, because then again, you're creating disparities, right? So like New York, they're saying it's free, which is great because, you know, that's a whole lot of women, but also more than likely women in New York may be making more money than women in say like the middle of nowhere, rural somewhere, you know what I'm saying? So it's
Yeah.
like it's helping them, but it's not helping the lower class women who are living in rural areas and don't have access to a CVS on every corner and things like that, you know, who can't just walk in and get that. So
So it costs
I
even
just,
more for them to even get, so it costs more to just buy the product. But then
yeah,
just even getting to the product is even more expensive because they don't have, you know, maybe they have to drive 50 miles to go to
yeah.
a
Or
store,
maybe
or
they
like
have to
gas
count.
stations have up, like they are not even like, gas stations are like so overpriced for their stuff, and I
Mm-hmm.
know they have to make money or whatever, but like even them going to, anyways, I don't want to go down super specifics because I can go on a tangent, but it's just
Right.
so, ugh.
It's frustrating. It's frustrating. So, okay, so we've talked about feminism and how like it can be very exclusive, right? And white woman centered. And so I want to talk about womanism and like the concept of womanism and being a womanist, and just like what do you know about excuse me, about womanism. And Ari and I, we both watched a short video, which was kind of cool. And so just want to talk about like, what are your thoughts about that? And do you think that do you think it's like a solution to the exclusivity of feminism?
um so one, I just learned about this when we were talking about it because you are like a super smart person, so you brought it to my attention. But when I learned more about it, what it sounds like, it's a result. Black women, Black people, they always find a way. So like if they're not going to be included in something where it's like, this is my true best interest, if you're not going to include me, I don't, like, none of that, I don't need you, but like I can make a way and make it work and uplift others the way that I think is the best, and like for everybody, like you can't push forward, women's rights and then like, oh, right to vote, and then like that's what said, oh yeah, it was everybody's right to vote on this day, but really like it was a hierarchy, like, oh no, white women were able to vote that day. And then
Mm-hmm.
this person was able. And then like, no, let's do things that uplift everyone. So I think it's like a result, like a positive consequence to, exclusion, which I know it sounds weird, but it's just like, if you exclude somebody and they turn around and do something that still moves them forward,
Mm-hmm.
it's a consequence for your exclusion, but like it's still a positive thing to do because, yeah, Black women we don't need you. I'm just kidding. But you know what I mean? Like, I think it's important to have womanism, especially specifically because like, when you're trying to be involved in a movement and like you feel passionate about it, and then you see that it's like serving people who aren't even like necessarily in your demographic, like that's like, anyways, it's important to have another group that you belong to so you could feel like we were just saying, it's disheartening, but like if I'm sure if we found a womanist or a womanism group that um is supporting things that we feel passionate about, I feel like it would just be even more powerful because people look like me,
Mm-hmm.
and I
Yeah.
think that there's nothing wrong with, feminist groups besides the fact that they've excluded Black people and Black women. As far as like the people, like I don't think that people are truly like, white women aren't the result of like, or they're not causing Black women, per se to have, disproportionate rates of other rights, but because they like, okay, well, we're white and we want to move women's rights forward for all women, but we know racism is it's like another thing, but like we can't fight two battles at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't think that like, I don't really know, I can't tell, like, you know what I mean, I feel like it's a double-edged sword. Like, can
Yeah.
you, like, you can, but like,
Right. I mean,
do you have the drive to
right.
fight two battles at the same time? And I think that maybe this just wasn't one of those things that they decided like, yeah, we're gonna do this regardless of what barriers come into our way, like we're gonna lift up everybody. And I don't think that it was like, especially during whatever those times, they
Yeah.
definitely wanted the easier route, whatever is easiest to make this shit happen, let's get it done.
Yeah.
Not saying that it was easy, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. I agree. I feel that I just lost my train of thought, but I definitely agree um, with that. Like, can you like is it like you can't actually fight these two battles at one time, or is that where your drive stops or like the passion stops? Because like for us, that's daily. Like we don't have the option. And you know,
Right.
that's where the exclusivity starts. Is because like if you're gonna say women, well then you have to think about all women experiences. And for us, we don't have the option to pick one or the other. We have to always talk about both because when we're present, both are present. I'm
Right.
both black and a female or a woman, you know, so that's what's present and that's what's going to create my experiences, and those experiences are experiences of a woman. So yeah, I think that's why, I guess, like you said, like this is the positive consequence of, you know, that exclusivity is womanism. um my first introduction to womanism, or like even like the word or like the thought about it, or even I guess hearing or reading, because it was a book, but reading really like bluntly just how, yeah, like the feminist movement really was exclusive, was when I was reading Asada for the first time. And that was my senior year at ASU, which was pretty cool, like a little bit before graduation, actually. And so
Who's
that
that
was the
by?
first time. It's the autobiography of Ashada Kaur.
Wow, I feel ignorant. I don't know who that is. This is a result of a
Another
failed education system, though. It's not my fault.
right, which we'll, which we'll also talk about. Yeah, because yeah, none of that should even exist in close to any kind of school in Arizona, right? So yeah, I read that my senior year, and that was the first time I like seeing the term and like, you know, the idea or the realness of feminists, the feminist movement being like exclusive was like brought to my attention, because prior to that it was like, okay, like yeah, like you want to support this, it's weird for you not to because it's talking about women and women, but it's like no, at the, you know, the core of it, it wasn't really women, it was white women,
Yeah.
you know. And so like you said, like I want to find a space that really sees me and is really fighting for all of me.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want us to all be standing, you know, arm in arm because we're, you know, burning our bras, but the minute our bras are off and y'all see my titties are brown, y'all are like, oh,
Right.
wait a minute.
You go to the back of the line.
You know what I mean?
Actually,
Yeah. So I'm sorry. I don't even know if that was appropriate, but I'm just, you know, like
no,
those are the
yeah.
things. Those are the things. And so yeah, that was my first intro to womanism. So like I get it. Like I completely understand it, because yeah, we need movements that cater to our whole beings, and like, you know, we're not gonna fight you and like force you to change it. Like if you don't want me here, you don't want me here, and that's
Right.
fine. You know, and I respect the, you know, the work that you're doing from over there for those, but like I still do have to do some more work. So like we're gonna go over here and do the work that's gonna encompass, you know, all of us, because at the end of the day, like with womanism, through the, you know, the definition and the movement period, like we're still fighting for white women too. It's not exclusive,
Yeah.
but since that one is centered somewhere else, then okay, we're gonna, clearly we need to have a center for other people too. So
Yeah. It's like you can't. What else would people expect? You know, like
yeah.
what would you expect if, you know, like if like for example the fucking protests. You know what I mean? We protested and we did, like black people protested and did what they had to do, and then um we did it because we had to, right? Like these aren't things that people are just like, oh, I'm gonna go and protest because I want to today. Like, no, these are things that like have to be done to move things forward. So like what has to be done isn't always comfortable. And like if womanism and
Yes.
black women lifting up you or whoever else is uncomfortable, then maybe it's not a bad thing. Uncomfortableness is also another way to say that like there's room to grow. So if you're uncomfortable, like there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? Now, if you're uncomfortable and you're on the other side of the fence and you're like working against a cause, then you can jump ship with the rest of them. But I think it's important, like these kind of groups that form because like they weren't included in a bigger cause. Like I'm not saying like if you decided like, oh, I'm part of a movement and I don't like a person, so I'm going to go and form something else. Like that's not cool, you know?
Hmm.
Because if anything I learned that if nothing else I learned out of my undergrad degree that like I've held true is like, for example, in Arizona, there are millions of nonprofits, right?
Hmm.
There's only like I could probably count on my hand the amount of foundations that funds these other nonprofits. So things like United Way and Virginia G. Piper and all the so if you decide to go and make a nonprofit that there when there's already one that exists, guess what? One of those nonprofits are going to get less money.
Hmm.
And you're going to end up taking away from a cause that you could have just helped and lift and boost. So I look at civil rights movements and things like that the same exact way. You know what I mean? Like, okay, if you're gonna if you're gonna leave and create something else, like make sure you're doing it with positive intention. Like you're not just doing it because you don't like the person that's leading it. I mean, if you don't like the person that's leading it and they're doing shit that is not with in line with what the movement is, then you call them out on it. Like, no, I'm not gonna stand for this, and whatever. And if that causes a result of you like separating, okay, cool. But I don't think it's always fair to say, like, oh, I don't like a person and I don't like the way they lead, but they're still following all the values that you believe in. I don't think that that's fair to leave and go make your own like movement. But I think it's
Hmm.
necessary for things to happen, and especially when it's like if Black women have always been like our next episode is about the power of Black women. There's always a Black woman involved in some movement. It doesn't matter how long ago it was. There's always one. And if you're not going to actively include them, but they're going to fight so hard for the cause as hard as you, and then you're going to turn around and say, "Well, actually,
Hmm.
you have to wait your turn." Like, no, fuck that. That's an
Right.
example. Like you can't make me fight for your movement as hard as you are and then turn around and tell me that I still have to wait my turn. No. So
Right.
I think womanism and womanists was in their right. Like fuck that. I'm going to be a Black woman and I'm going to uplift other Black women and our movements to make everything equal. Not everything. I mean everything can't be equal
Hmm.
in life cuz life isn't fucking fair. But you know what I mean? As far as like these rights movements, and like fuck it, sit down. If you're upset about it,
Yeah.
then that's your problem.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
I
got a little
also
hype there.
No, yeah, I feel that because it's real. And like I think something else that I really really liked was just like learning about womanism, and specifically that video that we watched that talked about it, was the emphasis that like it wasn't only talking about Black women, it was also talking about uplifting Black men. And
Mm-hmm.
I love that part of it too, because again, like with the feminist movement, you think about like women hating men, like that's a
Yeah.
very, like, you know what I'm saying, like in like that's a stigma, yeah, and like a very, not so positive stigma, but also like that's kind of where kind of some of the rhetoric has always stood. And so like I like that with womanism, like it's including that piece, and like and with that, like it really just talks about like uplifting, like in my head, like community and families, because that's what happens when you uplift, all genders and all people.
Yeah.
uh, so that's why I really fuck with it as well. You were you were you were going and you were preaching, and I wrote down what you said about like what has to be done isn't always comfortable, and like that's so real.
Yeah.
That's so real, and I love that. So sorry,
Snaps
I
for
just had to
that.
write it down. Yeah, I was, yeah, you were
It was also sometimes I
retyping some
say
notes
shit
there.
and I'm like talking to myself. I'm like, okay, if something is like, you know what I mean? I think it's a struggle, especially when it comes to like trying to fight for things you believe in.
Yeah.
Like the easy road isn't always the right one. Um,
Mm. Yep.
and like you sometimes have to learn that shit the hard way.
Yep.
So I'm curious though, do you label yourself a feminist or womanist, or why or why not?
um I mean, I guess I don't say either of them out loud, but if someone asked me either or, I would lean more so definitely towards the womanist and womanism, just again because it's the more
Mm,
um inclusive movement.
yeah.
You know, I like that. There's the Alice Walker quote that says, "Womanism is to feminism as purple is to lavender," and so like you see that like they're very similar, right? And like that very similar thing could be that like, you know, they're empowerment movements, and they're working towards rights for women. But, you know, that slight change is that like the inclusivity piece. What are the
Yeah.
women? Who are the women that you're talking about? You know, um, and yeah, and who does it center? So
And I also
yeah,
want to say that every white womanist doesn't, or sorry, every white feminist, I'm sure doesn't think like like it's been shown historically, right? I'm sure there are modern day feminists who are fighting for rights who do want to be inclusive. I'm sure, like
right.
I'm sure of that. But historically speaking, and the way that you know I
The
learned
movement kind
about
of came
it,
about. Yeah.
right? That isn't something that I was taught was inclusive. It was only like, Rosie, you can do it.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead. I was just going to talk about the tweet because I know that when we were thinking about this topic, you came across like a tweet that talked a little bit about it. Um, and it was like a short thread, and it was like two girls talking, and it started with a girl talking about how like, you know, she's gotten dragged for like not calling herself a feminist anymore.
Yeah.
And she was just saying like how she feels like new age feminism or like the new age women empowerment isn't really empowerment. And I have something to say about that, but someone responded to her and they're like this, and she's like, you know, like I get shit for not calling myself feminist for years because it's centered wealthy white women, which is another part of it. Like y'all were even ex- exclusive when you talked about white women. Like, like it
Yeah.
was a very, very small group of people who y'all were really trying to represent when the movement started, right? But then she said, like, you know, most feminists only care about women empowerment when it benefits them, which is like really interesting.
Mm,
Like a
yeah.
really interesting outlook, but that piece about how like women empowerment really don't be about women empowerment no more. Like I was just talking to somebody about that the other day, and how like it's so it sucks because like I think that and maybe it's because of social media, there's been this like push of like minimizing women empowerment to basically just like, you know, giving affirmations to any and every woman, you know, and like that's not
Yeah.
like women empowerment. Like, you know, like when I think about women empowerment specifically like with friends and things, it's like, you know, holding them accountable, like being responsible, like being like trustworthy, being caring, you know, like really wanting that person to elevate, and like, you know, doing what you can to help them do that. It's not just about like, you know, retweeting somebody and being like, yes, bitch, like, you know, like if that's women empowerment, like please, I don't need it, because like, you know, that's great, but like I also need to know that like if I'm slacking, like you're going to, you know, like check in on me, hold me accountable, and like help me, like lift me up, really, like
Yeah.
not just like, you know, send me some like I don't know, half baked, like, you know, not very genuine bullshit.
You can do it. I'm just kidding. I'm gonna keep
You know,
quoting
like yeah, like
that.
don't send me Rosie the Virgin.
Oh
Oh
man.
man,
I
yeah.
really like
But
this tweet also because most feminists only care about women empowerment when it benefits them. I think that it speaks volumes because I mean, if we're going to be completely honest, if I'm going to be completely honest, it's like feminism also like they fought for like your rights for your body, right?
mhm.
Well, some of them, those people who believe in abortion or don't believe in abortion, that's a whole nother ball field. But
Need to
let's
believe
say
in
for
minding your
example,
goddamn business.
I know, for example, your body, right? Like feminists are supposed to be like pro woman, not supposed to be, but like in my mind, they're pro body and body positivity and blah blah blah, right? But then we
Hmm.
have, you know, Haley Bailey, which is like what? She's like 20. I don't even fucking know. If you scroll down on my Instagram feed long enough, you're gonna see some Haley Bailey pictures. And she didn't even show like okay, anyways, I digress off that. But like that's an example. Like how many people are being like pro, oh, women this, black women this, blah 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 blah, and then turning around and scrutinizing this young black woman
Oh
who's
yeah,
deciding to show her body. In a
yeah.
way,
You're talking
like
about.
she wasn't even being sexual. And even if she was being sexual, that's none of your fucking business. If you don't want to watch it or look at it,
Like,
unfollow.
first of all, if Chloe was to put clothes on, you would still see her frame. Like the clothes are not hiding the fact that like her you know her butt is big and her waist is small.
Did I say
Like
Chloe or Haley? I said Haley, huh?
yeah, or
Sorry.
yeah,
I meant
Hallie.
Chloe. Hallie.
Yeah,
Shit. I got
I
them
get
mixed up.
girl. I get Van Jess mixed up too. Like I forget which one is which, but I digress. We won't talk about that right now. But I mean, yeah, but that's a very good point. Like, you know, it's supposed to be about like essentially it's literally in my head. I thought we just wanted women to be able to do whatever the fuck they want to do as long
Right.
as they weren't harming other people. Right?
That's
Like,
what it
don't
sounds
we
like
just
to
want,
me.
isn't that what we just want people to be able to do? Like, I don't want to, honestly, I don't want to police other people because I have my own kid. And, you know, that's who I'm supposed to be, I guess, policing for now until she grows up and does the policing for herself. But I don't have time to be thinking about other people's decisions and choices, especially if it's not going to impact me. I
Right.
want everyone to be happy, full, and live what they want to do and the life that they want to be. And so, you know, I definitely, when it comes to women who want to shout women empowerment, but then the moment a woman does something that you wouldn't do, you have issues and like you want to bring attention to that bothers me. And like
Yeah.
it goes back to the social media thing again, where people think that like, you know, you have a thought and you think that because there's social media that you're supposed to share that thought. And now here we all know that on the internet that you can't stand Chloe for being cute or doing something that you wouldn't do. And
And the crazy
honestly,
thing
we don't
is,
give a fuck.
whatever someone else does or doesn't do really doesn't benefit you anyways, right? Like it doesn't really fucking unless they're doing something like, trying to do some negative shit to say like I keep thinking about what's that show? Handmaid's Tale. If you try to do some shit like that, okay, then whatever you do does benefit or not benefit me. But I
Right.
also think that like for example, I I don't consider myself a feminist nor a womanist because honestly, I just care about too much shit and I honestly feel like I sometimes don't do enough. So some part of me is like I don't want to
Mm.
identify with either because I'm really not doing what I could be doing. And at the same time, I can afford pads and tampons and whatever the thing. Sorry men if you're listening. But like I can afford these things. Do I think it's fair that other women cannot afford it or like they can't afford the extra what $2 on the luxury tax or however much it is depending on your city? Do I care about that? Yes. Like just because I can afford it doesn't mean I think everybody else should be able to afford it. They should just be able to get it regardless of how much it costs, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
and I think that like for me if it if because it doesn't benefit me if somebody else gets that like I don't give a shit, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I feel like I don't want to claim any because like it's just like the whole like activist term, I don't feel like I do enough, you know what I mean? Like yeah, I'll share info and like, talk about it and things like that, but I again going back to like the whole systematic thing, like I don't feel like I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
anything that impacts the system that is in place to create these barriers. So
I feel
until I get
that.
to a point where I'm like calling motherfuckers and being like, yo, you gonna do this and this because
Yeah.
I donate to no, I'm not trying to be like that. I know that's illegal. But if I until I get to a point to where I'm like actually actively doing things in the community outside of like what I do electronically, I feel like I'm not gonna claim any of those titles just because I don't think it's fair to the people who are actually doing the things out there in the
I feel
world.
that. That's real. I feel that. I can respect that for sure.
And like, of course, like,
Okay.
sorry, one last thing. I always hype you up, and I feel like this should be just the Sydney show. But like, of course, like you're a doula. Like that's some shit. Like you're changing lives just by being a doula. And you could not do anything for the rest of your life and be like, damn, I changed lives for Black women just by being a doula and sharing information with them. You don't even have to take clients to really change women's lives. You educate me. I'm like, oh shit, this is good to know for whenever, you know what I mean? Like that's real. So I feel like you are definitely a womanist, whether you claim it or not. So,
I appreciate
anyways, I
that.
digress.
Thank you. All right, so we're not gonna keep y'all too long, but I love this conversation, Ari, and I'm glad that we had it. I definitely hope that if you're listening, you have some input. If you know consider yourself a womanist, or you know some stuff about womanism, please leave us a comment and just let us know your thoughts. We don't have a cause to bring awareness today, but I did want to share some resources. One, I did want to just go back, and we were so hype about getting our this episode recorded and getting into season 2 that we kind of even missed the ball at telling you some of the new things that are going to be happening. So
Oh, yeah.
this season, you know how we like to do and bring awareness to things. This season, we are going to have a theme for each month, and within that month, we'll have a few episodes that will tackle different topics within that theme. And so this month is Black Women Appreciation Month. Ooh, 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 ooh,
Yay,
ooh.
yay.
So we're just going to be talking and highlighting Black women and all that good stuff throughout this month. And so that's why we wanted to start talking about feminism and womanism, and just hyping up the pioneers, Alice Walker, Kimberly Crenshaw. I hope I said her name right. All those women and who've come before us, and who have shared knowledge, bell hooks, all those people. Who've poured into this movement. And so the resources I want to share is, y'all know that I am, what do you call it? A bibliophile? When you love
Yeah.
books. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I have an obsession with like buying books, or, just reading. So I was doing like some Googling, because I was like, all right, well, like I know about womanism, but I want to know more. So I found this really great article in New York Magazine that talked about, a few best books for Black feminism. It's a really, really great list. A few examples on that list is Sisters of the Yam by Bell Hooks, which I do have that book, and I have read that book. Eloquent Rage by Brittany Cooper, and The Salt Eaters by Toni Cade Bambara. And I am definitely buying The Salt Eaters and reading that this year.
Yeah, I heard it was
Um,
good.
yeah, I've heard really great things about that book. Kind of salty that I don't even own it yet, but definitely going to treat myself to that book probably for Black History Month. Unless, somebody wants to buy it for me. Um,
Hey,
no,
it's Black
I'm
Women
just kidding.
Appreciation. I'm just kidding.
Right, yeah. um, but yeah, we will post that link to the entire list in our Instagram bio. So again, make sure y'all are following us on Instagram so that y'all can stay connected to these really great resources. Let us, leave us a comment on Instagram. Let us know some of your favorite books about feminism or feminism, and let us know what you're reading.
Yeah. And also leave a review. Sorry, that was very awkward, but tell a friend to tell a friend, and
Right.
appreciate the Black women in your life, who have come before us, and those who are fighting for us.
Yeah. And the quote we're going to leave you with today is a quote by our very own Ari, which is, "What has to be done isn't always comfortable."
Oh, yeah. All right. That's dope. Okay. I'm going to leave here with a smile. So, yeah, I hope that this was moving for you. And, if we said something that spoke to you, please let us know. If we said something that sounded ridiculous, I would like to know too, because sometimes I say some shit. So, we take all feedback. So, let us know.
Absolutely.
Slide in our DMs in a comment. We don't bite.